Hello, welcome back to the Young Professionals Math Bootcamp. This is Lesson 7, Integers and Absolute Value. So when we're talking about absolute value and integers, we're talking about using negative numbers in our math problem. So adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with negative and positive numbers together. So first thing I want to review is just what does an absolute value of a number look like? So here are some examples. You know they're asking for absolute value when you have these straight parallel lines. So what we're looking for here is what is the absolute value of -6. The absolute value of -6 is simply 6. So whatever is inside these bars just becomes positive. What does that mean? Why does it become positive? Because we're just talking about the distance from 0 to this number. So from 0 to -6, if you look at a number line, which we'll look at in just a moment, you'll see that from 0 to -6, it's 6 spaces. So that's why this is 6. The absolute value of -2.5 is positive 2.5. Again, what is the value from 0 to -2.5? 2.5. Think of it like money. If you have $0 and you owe someone $2.50, that's a negative, you owe them. But are you actually giving them -2.5? No, you're giving them $2.50. So whatever's in these bars becomes positive. Don't get it confused with parentheses, okay? -7 in parentheses means -7. Absolute value has to be these straight bars. And then the absolute value of 7, same thing, it's 7 because it's the distance from 0 to 7 on a number line. So now we're going to look at a slide, and it shows you a number line. Again, the number line goes on forever in both directions, but here we're just looking at a -10 through a +10. So use this number line to add and subtract with negative numbers. So if your problem were 5 plus a -8, you're always going to start at the first number given. So the first number given is 5. You're going to move 8 spaces to the left because you're taking away 8. You're adding, but you're adding a negative. So you're going to go from 5 to the left 8 spaces. That would give you -3. So 5 plus a -8 is -3. I'm going to show you on the board just a few more examples of this adding and subtracting with negative numbers. And again, I would use the number line to help you practice at first. You want to know how to do this without a number line because if you have numbers that are a lot larger, you won't be able to use this number line, or you'll have to find one that goes on forever. But for now, while you're practicing, go ahead and use the number line that's on that slide or find another one that's similar. Here's just a basic problem. 6 minus 2, you know, is 4. Because you're starting at 6, you're taking 2 away. So you start at 6, go 2 to the left, and you end up at 4. This is actually the same problem. You're starting at 6, you're adding, but you're adding a negative number. So you're going 2 to the left. So you would end up at 4. So minus a number or plus a negative, really you're going to do the same operation. Now here's a different example where you have 7 minus a -2. When you see minus a negative, you're simply going to bring these two together, and it's going to be a plus. So this turns into 7 plus 2. 7 plus 2 is 9. So it might seem tricky at first, but you just have to remember 2 negatives next to each other like this, you're going to add it. So it's kind of like you're getting rid of a negative. So you had a -2, but you're going to get rid of it. You're going to give it back. So minus a negative, you add. Just be careful that this is a different example where, again, you have minus a negative, but look at where you are starting on your number line. So you would rewrite it, and you would still put these two together to make a plus, but you're starting at a -7. So you would start at that -7. Now you're going to go 2 to the right, and that will give you a -5. So always look at where you're starting. That's why the number line is helpful, because you can put your pencil on that number and move it to the left or the right. Here we moved it to the right because these two negatives will make it a positive. Here we also moved to the right, but we started at -7. A few more examples deal with multiplication and division. These are sometimes easier to remember because the rule is a little bit easier. When you multiply two negatives, when you multiply or divide two negatives, you get a positive. So again, just knowing your multiplication helps. 7 times 6 is 42. Two negatives, when you multiply, give you a positive. If I have one negative and one positive, so -7 times 6, that's going to give me a -42. So you might see a few story problems that deal with multiplying, dividing, adding, subtracting with integers using negative numbers. Also, if you are planning on taking your GED or taking more advanced algebra classes, this is really helpful when you do polynomials and other algebraic equations. So you really want to have a good understanding of adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing with negative numbers. So two negatives, when you're multiplying and dividing, make a positive. One negative, one positive gives you a negative. So same with division. 42 divided by a -6, you have one positive, one negative. Your answer is going to be negative. If both 42 and the 6 are negative, then two negatives, my answer is going to be positive. And always make sure you have that negative in the right spot. So that's adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with integers. And we're going to look at our first story problem. So we're talking about a mountain and then a valley. So the elevation of a mountaintop is 8,600 feet above sea level. A valley has an elevation of 242 below sea level. So that's going below sea level, 242 feet. How much higher is the mountaintop than the valley? So again, it's a story problem. You want to look for clues. How much higher? And then you have than. So you're comparing, so it's probably going to be a subtraction problem. And you might be able to easily do this question, but if you're not sure, sometimes a picture is helpful. And again, you don't have to be an artist, but just on your scrap paper, you can draw something. So here you have your mountaintop, and it is 8,600 feet. And now we're talking about a valley that goes down. So that's going to be 242. But remember, it is below sea level. So this line here is sea level. We want to find the difference. So what is the difference from the top to this -242? You would start from 8,600. You're subtracting, but remember you're subtracting a negative number. So you have 8,600. Now remember, when you're subtracting a negative, you actually add it. So the difference from the top of this mountain to the bottom of the valley is 8,842. So however you choose to look at it, you might just simply write it out this way in the sentence, or you might need to draw a picture so you can actually visualize you're talking about the top of a mountain to sea level, and then from sea level to the valley. And this is an example of absolute value, because even though this is a -242, we still want to know what is the difference from 0 to -242. So it's really the absolute value of -242, which is 242. And again, think about whether or not your answer is reasonable, if it makes sense, and that does. The next slide, we're talking about temperature. So a lot of times you'll see these integer story problems talk about temperature, because as we know, temperature goes up and down, It can be above 0, it can be below 0. So story problem number 2, the temperature in the morning was 45 degrees Fahrenheit. By noon, the temperature was 62 degrees Fahrenheit, so you know it went up. At sunset, the temp had dropped 24 degrees since noon. So what is the difference between the temperature in the morning and the temperature at sunset? So we're given all this information we need, but we have to do a little bit of work before we can figure out what the number is that we're looking for. So first, it wants to know how much has it dropped since noon? Well, at noon, we know it was 62 degrees. But by sunset, it had dropped 24. So that means 62, we would subtract 24, and that would give us 38 degrees. So the temperature at sunset was 38 degrees. Now we want to find the difference between morning and sunset. So at morning, it was 45. At sunset, it was 38. The difference is 7. So here they're giving you several different temperatures throughout the day, but you still have to figure out what's the difference between the noon temperature, the temperature at sunset, and then you have to go back to the original temperature and the temperature at sunset. So you're kind of going up and down the thermometer. And again, that's the kind of problem where you might want to even draw a thermometer on the board or on your paper and fill in those numbers to help you visualize it. That's all we have for integers and absolute value. I will see you in the next lesson.